Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're venturing into the shadowed history of Kansas City, Missouri,
Yeah.
really digging into the rise and, well, the fall of its infamous crime family.
Yeah, and we're using the Wikipedia entry on them as our main source material here. The goal is to pull out the key story, How did they start, what shaped them, and where do things stand now?
Exactly.
Mm.
Sort of a shortcut to understanding this whole saga, their origins, how they evolved, and what's left today. We want to connect the dots, right? Not just list facts.
Right, it's about the narrative.
Okay, so where does this whole story kick off? What are the origins?
It really starts back in 1912. Two Sicilian brothers, Joseph DiGiovanni, they called him Joe Church, and Peter DiGiovanni, or Sugar House Pete. They'd apparently fled Sicily and landed in Kansas City.
Okay, 1912. So they set up shop pretty early. What were they doing initially?
Well, the source indicates they started establishing, early criminal operations, rackets, just getting their footing, basically. These were the seeds.
But then something big happened nationally, didn't it? Something that really poured gasoline on the fire for groups like this.
Oh, absolutely. Prohibition. That was the game changer. Suddenly, the DiGiovannis were perfectly placed. They grew rapidly and eventually became the sole bootlegging operation in Kansas City.
The sole operation. Wow, that's significant control.
It really was. And it wasn't just about the booze itself. It was about building power, controlling territory.
And Kansas City itself was kind of unique during that time, wasn't it? A bit notorious.
Definitely. A key figure emerges here, John Lazia. He came to control their rackets and eventually became the boss. But the really crucial factor was Tom Pendergast's political machine.
Ah, Pendergast.
Yeah.
His influence was huge.
It essentially created a protective bubble. Pendergast's control meant the mob could operate almost completely unchecked. Kansas City became known as a wide-open town. Get this, practically no arrests for alcohol offenses during Prohibition.
Wait, no arrests in the whole city, while Prohibition was the law of the land.
Pretty much. That's what the source suggests. Imagine that environment. It directly benefited the DiGiovannis. They could operate and expand without worrying about local law enforcement.
That's incredible. It's like a perfect storm for organized crime to just explode. So they got rich and powerful thanks to Pendergast and Prohibition.
Exactly. That period really cemented their foundation.
Okay, so fast forward, 1933, Prohibition ends. The big money tap theoretically turns off. What happens next? Do they just pack it in?
Not quite. The structure, the networks, the muscle, that all still existed. The source alleges they shifted tactics, maybe started extorting bars, things like that.
Makes sense. But leadership changes too, right? Laggi doesn't last forever.
No, he doesn't. He was assassinated in 1934. And the finger, according to the source, pointed right at his own underboss, Charles Carollo.
A classic power grab then. Taking out the boss to become the boss.
Looks that way. Carollo took charge, ruled as boss until 1939. But he wasn't taken out by a bullet.
Oh, what got him?
Taxes, tax evasion. The IRS strikes again, right? It's off in the paper trail.
So Carollo's out. Who stepped up then? Another underboss.
You got it. Charles Bonaggio becomes the boss. And he seemed to expand things further, more into general racketeering.
And the political connections continue?
Oh, yeah. Bonaggio apparently helped Forrest Smith get elected as Missouri governor. Those kinds of connections, they provide cover, influence. It's invaluable.
But it's a dangerous game, getting that close to legitimate power. Did Bonaggio last?
Nope. He was also assassinated in 1950. The reports suggest it might have been ordered by the Mafia's National Commission.
The commission. So, like, the board of directors for the Mafia across the country.
Sort of, yeah. It shows that Kansas City wasn't operating in a total vacuum. Decisions made elsewhere could have deadly consequences locally. Bonaggio might have ruffled feathers on a national level.
Fascinating. So, bigger forces at play after Bonaggio.
Anthony Gizzo took over. But his time was really short. He became boss in 1950 and died of a heart attack in 1953.
Wow, that's a lot of turnover in a relatively short period. Lazia, Carollo, Bonaggio, Gizzo suggests some instability.
Definitely. But then comes probably the most significant name in the family's history, Nicholas Savella.
Savella, right?
Yeah.
That name seemed synonymous with the Kansas City mob for a long time. His era felt different.
Absolutely. He took over in 53 and really marks a period of major expansion and consolidation. He broadened the rackets significantly.
And he built bridges, right? Didn't just focus inward.
Crucially, yes.
Yeah.
He forged strong alliances with families in other major cities. This wasn't just casual cooperation, it was strategic partnership.
Which cities are we talking about? Who are the key allies?
The source lists quite a few heavy hitters. The Chicago outfit, naturally, but also Cleveland, Colorado, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, and the St. Louis family.
That's a serious network. That must have massively increased their power and reach.
No question. It put them on the national map in a much bigger way. More resources, new markets, shared information, mutual support.
And wasn't Savella instrumental in tapping into that big new cash cow out west, Las Vegas?
Exactly. That was another key part of his legacy. He famously used the Teamsters Union Pension Fund, which the mob had significant influence over, to finance casino development in Vegas.
Ah, the Teamsters connection. That explains a lot. Huge money involved there.
Huge. It showed organized crime moving into more, let's say, sophisticated financial ventures. Big business, really.
But even with all that power, all that money, the law eventually catches up, doesn't it?
It usually does, one way or another. In 1975, Savella himself was sent to prison, not for Vegas skimming initially, but for gambling charges.
Gambling on what?
Believe it or not, betting on the 1970 Super Bowl, which ironically featured the Kansas City Chiefs against the Minnesota Vikings.
You're kidding. He got pinched for betting on the Super Bowl with his own city's team in it.
That's what the record shows. Maybe he bet against them, who knows? But yeah, gambling charges put him away for a bit.
And while the boss is dealing with legal issues, sometimes things get messy back home, right? Was there internal conflict too?
There was. Around that same time, the mid-70s, a really violent war broke out over control of the River Quay Entertainment District in Kansas City.
River Quay. What happened there?
Bombings, murders within the family ranks. It seems like a pretty brutal internal power struggle was going on for control of that lucrative area.
So volatile times. The boss is in jail, factions are fighting, and then the feds launch a big operation, something called Straw Man.
Right. Operation Strawman. Late 1970s, the FBI started looking into mob influence at the Tropicana Casino in Las Vegas. They set up wiretaps, including, crucially, in Kansas City.
And those KC wires picked up more than they bargained for.
Way more. They stumbled onto this huge conspiracy to skim profits directly from the casino, taking cash off the top before it was ever counted or taxed. Classic mob stuff.
Skimming. Right. Who was running that show?
A guy named Joe Agosto, who ran the Tropicana's big show, The Follies Bergère. The wiretaps revealed he was the point man, secretly sending envelopes of cash to Nick Savella back in KC.
Just Savella. Or were others getting a cut?
Oh, it was a network. The money was also going to Joseph Fayupa, the boss of the Chicago outfit, and guys in the Cleveland and Milwaukee families, too. It really showed how these alliances worked in practice joint criminal ventures.
So the Kansas City investigation basically blew the lid off this multi-city Vegas skimming operation.
Pretty much. It was huge. In 1981, indictments came down. Agosto, Nick Savella, his brother Carl Savella, and key guys like Carl DeLuna and Carl Thomas.
And they were convicted.
Yep. Convictions followed in 1983. It was a massive blow to the Kansas City family's leadership and their national standing. Really cut the head off the snake for a while.
And did the legal troubles related to gambling stop there? Or did that continue to be an issue?
It continued into the 90s. In 1992, James Moratina pleaded guilty to money laundering tied to illegal video gambling machines.
Okay. Any familiar names involved with them?
Yeah, his partner was identified as Peter J. Simone, who was described as a purported mob underboss at the time, and there's a bit of history repeating itself.
How so?
Moratina's father had also been convicted back in the 80s for, guess what? Skimming Las Vegas casinos. Shows how these things can run in families, or at least criminal circles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like father, like son, in a really unfortunate way. So Nick Savella is convicted, eventually passes away. Who takes over leadership in KC?
Well, after Nick's conviction and later death, William Camisano Sr., known as Willie the Rat, apparently took the reins until he died in 1995.
Willie the Rat. Okay. And after him?
Then Anthony Savella, Nick's nephew, I believe, became boss. He led until his death in 2006.
So the family name continues in leadership for a while. But were they still a major force by then? What did the FBI think?
By the late 1990s, the FBI was estimating maybe only 25 made members left.
Yeah.
Properly initiated guys. That's a pretty significant drop from their peak influence. The decline was noticeable.
25 members. Okay. Definitely smaller. So moving into the 2000s, the 21st century, who's believed to be in charge now, is there still a formal structure?
The general belief, based on law enforcement sources and reporting, is that John Joseph Ciortino, known as Johnny Joe, is the current boss. He's actually Anthony Savella's godson.
Keeping it in the extended family, it seems. And the underboss.
Peter Simone, the same one connected to that 90s gambling case, is thought to be the underboss now.
Okay, so Ciortino and Simone. And have we seen these names or associated names pop up in more recent incidents? Is the family still active?
Well, some familiar figures passed away, like Carl Tuffy DeLuna in 2008. He was a major player from the Savella days. But yes, activity continued. In 2010, there was a bust involving a big internet gambling scheme.
Internet gambling. So they adapted to the times.
Seems so. And look who was involved. Jerry Camisano, son of Willie the Rat, Vincent Savella, son of the former boss Anthony Tony Ripe Savella, and even two grandsons of Anthony Savella, Michael and Anthony Sansone, plus William Camisano Jr.
Wow, so the next generation, the sons and grandsons, still involved, but moving online. That's interesting.
It shows adaptation. Around 2015, crime reporter Scott Bernstein, who covers this stuff extensively, estimated the family was even smaller, maybe 12 or fewer made guys.
12. That's really dwindling. What did he say they were involved in?
Yeah.
Still the old rackets?
Yeah, still some traditional stuff, gambling, loan sharking, also some extortion connected to drugs and the strip club scene, so much smaller scale, but clinging on in certain niches.
And then there was that incident just last year, December 2023. Something about a restaurant.
Yes, that caused a bit of a stir. Apparently there was a physical fight, a brawl, at Cascone's Italian restaurant, and it allegedly involved some pretty high-up guys.
Like who?
Reports named the underboss, Peter Las Vegas Pete Simone, and his son, Joseph, Joe Pete Simone.
The underboss getting into a fistfight in a restaurant. What was it supposedly about?
Seems it was over money issues related to a bar called Gil Hooley's, which supposedly has ties to the organization. It just goes to show, even now, disputes can get physical, very old school.
Not exactly keeping a low profile. Was there any fallout from that public dust-up?
The word is that the boss, Johnny Joe Ciortino, was not pleased and reprimanded them. And the FBI still identifies a formal structure. Frank DeLuna is named as the current consigliere, or advisor.
So despite the small numbers and the occasional public mess, there's still a boss, underboss, consigliere structure in place, at least nominally.
Apparently so. And the source lists other names with criminal pasts or associations, reinforcing that the network, though diminished, still exists. Guys like Vincent Savella, James Mortina again, Vincent Picciotto with a violent past, Peter Rabas, banned from Nevada casinos, John Termini in gambling, and William Camisano Jr., Little Willie, who just died in 2023 and was also blacklisted from casinos.
Right. It paints a picture of a long shadow, even as the organization itself has shrunk. Just to recap, the relationships allies we mentioned were Chicago, Cleveland, LA, etc. Rivals were just listed as various local gangs.
Yeah, the source is a bit vague on rivals, just mentioning various gangs in the Kansas City area, perhaps indicates less structured opposition compared to their major mafia allies during their heyday.
Gotcha. And if people want to read more or watch something?
There are those books by former FBI agent William Owsley Open City covering 1900, 1950, and Mobsters in Our Midst for 1950-2000. Very detailed.
Okay. And a documentary.
Yeah, Gangland Wire. It actually uses real FBI wiretap audio from the Vegas skimming investigations. Pretty compelling stuff.
Real wiretaps, wow. But maybe skip the Fargo TV series if you want accuracy on the KC mob.
Right. The source specifically notes the Fargo portrayal has no resemblance to the real Kansas City crime family. So entertainment, not history there.
Good distinction. Okay, so wrapping this up, we've seen this journey from Sicilian roots, the explosion during Prohibition thanks to unique local politics, the Savella era of national influence, and Vegas riches.
Followed by the major setbacks from law enforcement like Operation Strawman, the internal conflicts, and this long, slow decline into the 21st century where they seem to be a much smaller but still present entity.
It really is a microcosm of the broader American mafia story in many ways, isn't it? Rise, peak, decline, adaptation.
It is, and it highlights the resilience, you could say, of these kinds of organizations. Even after major hits, they find ways to persist, often shifting their focus.
Which leaves us with a thought for you, the listener. When you look at this whole arc, the factors that let the Kansas City family wound, the things that brought them down, and the fact that something still remains.
What does that tell us about the underlying conditions in society that allow organized crime to take root and persist? And maybe more importantly, looking forward, how might these groups continue to evolve, especially with technology and changing social landscapes? What does the future of organized crime even look like?